What do we know, everybody? I think tonight I'm going to tell you guys a story from really early on in my trucking career with my first company. Now, most people, their starter company is going to be a bigger company. I was working for a company pulling flatbed. And the training I received there, I was very happy with. I was very happy with my trainer. I'm still good friends with him until today. Really good dude. But I had a lot of issues with the front office of that place, and mainly what we call the outside repair department. And these are the people that you would call for breakdowns or issues with your truck, and they would dictate what you do, whether you go to a shop, limp it along, if they send somebody out to you, or if you got to get it to their terminal. Well, this truck that I jumped in, it wasn't a great truck out the gate. They had APUs on all their trucks, and they had an idle shut off, and you couldn't override it. They wanted you to run your APU instead of idling, which is understandable, but my APU never did work the whole time I was at that company. I was there for, well, over a year. But a lot of issues with the outside repair part of this place. But this story will start when I was running south, going through Connecticut, and I heard an air leak. Well, I called the people, and they said, okay, stop, see if you can figure out where it's coming from. I just knew it was behind the cab. There wasn't a pressure drop at that time, so they said, just roll. It is what it is. You're early in your career. You can say whatever you want, but you had to roll. I mean, they have you by your hair, I guess, and they can tell you to go jump on a bus and take what you can pack in a backpack and leave. And just call it a refusal to take a load or whatever. I mean, they can do pretty much whatever they want, especially with the newer guys that don't know what they're doing. So I kept going south, and I kept hearing an air leak. And I kept calling them, and I met with the same response. It's a hot load. Go. You got to go. We'll worry about it after you get unloaded. So I kept going, and the air leak got worse and worse and worse, and there was a big pressure drop, and I called him again. And I was told the same thing. It's a hot load. Keep going. Don't worry about it. You got to stop calling us. Well, there's two major southbound interstates that bottleneck. Over there by New Haven, Connecticut, I think it is, somewhere over in that area. And right at that bottleneck, in traffic, during rush hour, I lost all air pressure because of that leak. I was blocking traffic going into that. And come to find out later on, I was actually on the news. They had a helicopter overhead that was their traffic report. So I called these people that I was working for, called their repair department, and they told me to sit there and wait till one of the truck stops can send somebody out. Ridiculous. They wanted me to sit there and block the interstate. In the lane, couldn't get off side, nothing. Sitting in that bottleneck, causing all sorts of problems. So highway patrolman come up, told him what the situation was, and he said, no, this isn't going to work. And I said, you know what, I agree. This is ridiculous. And I was honest with him. I pulled bull rack for a lot of years after this and did the whole outlaw bit, but in this situation, I was mad. And rightfully so, I believe. You got an issue like this, it's a big issue, and they just want you to keep on going because the load's more important than anything else. It's ridiculous. So he called a towing company out. Well, I called the outside repair people and I told them, and I'll tell you what, guys, I got screamed at. They called me every name under the sun. They threatened to fire me right then and there, and I put it on speaker. The state patrolman gave me an earful, and he hung up, and then he called me right back and screamed at me again. Towing company came out, and they caged the brakes, did everything they had to do to get me so they could move me. And that truck stop guy showed up and he looked at me, asked him what the issue was, and I told him, and he said, well, there's nothing we can do about that. And I said, I know. And I said, at this point, I'm mad. They wanted you to come out here. I don't want it to be a wasted trip, so you charge them however you got to charge them and follow me to this place they're taking me to. So we went to that place. I called the company, told them when I was there. And these people that towed me, they towed me right out in front of their yard. Bad neighborhood. I mean, you could hear gunshots and just all sorts of crazy stuff. Well, the truck stop guy, he looked at it, and obviously he couldn't do anything, and so he called the company back, and they screamed at him and called him all kinds of names. Then they called me, screamed at me, called me all sorts of names, and at this point, the lady that kind of runs this towing company, she was inside. She come out mad at me and said, you know, these people won't even answer the phone when I call them try to get the bill paid. Keep in mind, this is a big company. You see their trucks running up and down the interstate all the time. But it's this outside repair department. I mean, these are the guys that are causing all the problems. So they sat there and they tried to get me to pay for it. And the guy, I believe he was the son of the lady that owns this place. He was the guy that towed me. He said, you know what, you're not paying for this. We're not doing this. He said, I'm going to get on the phone with him. And he called him and he was pretty harsh with the guy. He said, you know what, you're going to pay this bill or I'm going to lock it in my yard and I'm going to charge you for every minute it's sitting there. So they paid the bill for the tow. And then I called him and I said, okay, what are we doing now? Because I can't idle here. I mean, they were pretty clear about that. And I couldn't idle anyway because they had the idle shut off. And my APU didn't work. You know, this is the middle of winter when this thing's going on. I mean, it's cold. Well, the guy called me every name under the sun again and said, I'm not paying to put you in a hotel, which is what their company policy states they're supposed to do. I mean, you got a big 3-ring binder full of paperwork that has their company policies, and that's one of them. You got to read through them all and sign them. But he didn't care. I mean, this is what these people would do. They would call you on the phone and tell you this stuff instead of sending it over to Qualcomm's that we had because they didn't want a paper trail. I was done. I was mad. I mean, my whole life, my whole working life, I like to work for people that treated me well. I mean, you want to make a good living, make good money, and do this, that, and the other, but the main thing to me was getting treated well. And I wasn't. So I started packing my big duffel bag that I had with me. I mean, and that's how they get a lot of those guys, because they had a big old, oh, it's a big old wire crate like those big chemical barrels come in. And they had that full of flatbedder stuff, edge protectors, ratchet straps, all sorts of stuff. Well, that was from the people that did what I was going to do, where they just pack up what they can, jump on a bus, and leave. Well, I texted my trainer. I told him everything about it, and I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this. Well, he was at the home terminal, and there's the only nighttime person I ever got along with. She was there. She called her husband. Her husband was an owner-operator for 20 some odd years, I believe, and turns out to be a really good guy. I get along with him great. Well, he had just started working for that company once he kind of semi-retired, sold his truck, did whatever. Well, he started working there in the outside repair department. So he called me on his cell phone on his way there. He was mad. I told him everything that happened, just like I tell you guys now. And probably a little more in depth then. I mean, because this was 8, 9 years ago. Something like that, 10 years ago. And, oh, he was mad. He went in there, and from what I heard, he tore everybody apart. And he was going to whip the one guy, and went to the office, and he said, this isn't the way it's going to work. He said he called a different towing company. They're going to tow me to a different spot. and they're going to give me a ride to a hotel. Elder Towing Company showed up, and they separated the truck, towed the truck, and they had a day cab they hooked the trailer up to, took it there so I could drop them in 2 different spots so the trailer and the load was secure. And from what that nighttime lady told me and what that guy that came in, her husband, told me, take the bill of lading, take everything that you're going to need, and you go to the hotel. And they'd pay for the hotel. Well, the tow driver didn't take me to the hotel. Was what it was. But I used my phone and I figured out what the closest hotel was, and I walked over there. Kind of a terrifying experience, I guess, for a guy that's from a town of 1,100 people in the middle of nowhere, you know. But I got there. There was big bulletproof glass there in front of where you check in. Got my room key, and I had to pay for the room. They wouldn't take a card over the phone and do it. So I went to the room. Door got knocked on all night long. I mean, it was a pretty roachy hotel. Next morning I got up, the guy called me, asked me how everything went, told him, the guy didn't give me a ride like he was supposed to, but other than that it was fine. So he said, okay, we'll hang out till just close to check-in time or check-out time, and I'll call you back. And true to his word, he called me back and he said, okay, said the truck's going to such and such dealership, so you're going to have to get a cab, take a cab over to a hotel that's closer. He said, I found this one, it's a nicer hotel. And it was a nicer hotel. So I called the cab, guy showed up, really good guy, really great guy. I mean, I have ridden in a lot of cabs, unfortunately, and this guy was great. A lot of fun stories. He was kind of a go-to guy, I guess, for a lot of the politicians and all those other guys are going over there for a night of fun. He told me some pretty crazy stories. But we got over there. He said, you know what, you need another ride. Said, I probably won't be able to come back here, but I can get you in touch with somebody that'll do you good. So checked into that hotel. They wouldn't take card over the phone, so I had to pay for it again. Was what it was. And I kind of tried to wind down. And that guy called me back and he said, this isn't supposed to happen. You're right, per company policy, this stuff's supposed to be done. He said, I can't give you the number of the guy that runs this whole deal, but I can give you the number of the second in command. So I called the second in command, left him a voicemail, and just kind of sat and relaxed. Try to wind down, try to kind of make sense of everything that was going on, I guess. Well, I got a phone call while I was in the shower, and I got out, and there was just a long, nasty voicemail. And they had sent somebody over to repower the load, and obviously there wasn't a bill of lading there because they told me to take it. This load wasn't a hot load. It didn't really need to be there at any particular time. So they wanted me to take the bill of lading for whatever purpose. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I just do what I'm told. Well, they decided they're going to have that guy repower the load, and it was going to go close to where he was going home. Well, he was mad because there was no bill of lading. And this guy called me a lot of names, called me stupid, this, that, and the other, and I was livid. After everything that had happened, I was mad. And I figured it wasn't worth my energy to call and scream at him because, like I said, there's a lot of things that aren't communicated, a lot of things that are lost in translation, a lot of things that aren't relayed. So I called the operations department that's there on the weekends, and I tore them apart. First person I talked to told me the load wasn't repowered, tried to call me a liar. And it just went around and around and around, and finally the head guy over there called me and said, you know what, you're right, and that was unacceptable. And I said, it's fine. I said, but you don't call him and reprimand him because that's what they were going to do. I said, he was told to go over there and pick up this load and that everything would be there, and it wasn't because you guys told me to take it. I said, that's not right for you to call and scream at him about your guys' mistake. So they called him, explained the situation, and they got the shipper to fax over another bill of lading, and they got it to him. And the guy called me back and apologized, and it was what it was. It was what it was. So I sat there all weekend, and on that Monday I got the call from the second in command. I told him everything that had happened, everything that was said. The guy that came in that night to help me out, he backed everything up, as did my trainer and that one guy's wife. It wasn't a bad deal. The guy was very sympathetic. He was very nice, polite. And he said, you know what? He said, you're right. This isn't supposed to happen this way. Those guys shouldn't be doing that to you. Everything's supposed to be documented. There's supposed to be a paper trail. So he said, okay, I'm going to give you a number. You go ahead and call it at such and such time. And that's what I did. And the number that I called was for the head guy in the maintenance department. The guy that dealt with everything with the trucks as far as breakdowns and everything else. He was the head guy. And he was also best friend of the guy that owned the company. So I called the guy. I talked to him. Told him everything that happened. And you know what that guy did? He called me a liar. He told me I was lying. That those guys wouldn't do that. After everything that had happened, after everything that I've been through, after all the messages I sent on that Qualcomm that were not replied to because they called me back, I got called a liar. I just couldn't believe it. They told you when you went there for orientation that if you can't get an issue resolved, to keep going up the ladder. And things will get better, things will happen. And I did exactly what I was supposed to from the word go. I let them know of issues. I made sure there was a paper trail. And in the end, I get called a liar. Because they're degenerate idiots over there apparently couldn't make a mistake or do anything wrong. I'm sure there was more that went into it than that on his end. There's probably a set of whatever that he's got to go through to deal with situations like this. If he thinks there's something wrong, and he probably just didn't want to do it. But I couldn't believe it. I mean, this is early on in my career. The first year of my career. I mean, I did everything I was supposed to do, and I get called a liar in the end because of it. I mean, what are you supposed to do? The guy told me that I was going to have to go and find a place to get my APU fixed after this before I go get another load. He told my driver manager that. So I was thinking, okay, well, something's going to come out of this deal. It's going to be good. And it didn't happen. They never did send me anywhere to go get anything done. Because they would work around with the operations and the senior driver managers, and everybody would get together and they put you on a load. They tell you, okay, well, when we get you back to the yard, they'll fix it there. Well, then it happens that you would never get back to the yard. And when you did get back to the yard, like, okay, well, we don't have time to fix it now. We got so many trucks here, and you get a load you got to go pick up over here. And I mean, it was that game all the time. I mean, that's just what it was. I think a lot of big companies are probably about the same. But I mean, I stuck it out for my year and moved on to different things. But that story right there was probably one of the worst. Just overall series of days with one thing going wrong. I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. I mean, and everything worked out in the end. I mean, look at where I'm at now. But at that time right there, just starting your career, that was not a fun time. And with my anxiety and everything else, it was just awful. But oh well, I made it through. I didn't stick with that company much longer than a year, but I made it through. I mean, I was ready to pack everything up and leave. Believe that. But at any rate, guys, I rambled on long enough. I enjoy telling these stories, even if they're not always fun or pleasant to remember. But I do enjoy telling these stories. For those of you who stuck around to the end, I thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, I thank you guys for watching.